And the first comment here, this is from DP, who responded on YouTube to the video I did on the $20 per hour minimum wage for fast food workers, which has been approved and signed into law by Gavin Newsom. And DP says, does not make any sense. Entry level, non skilled workers, $20 an hour. John, I have to agree with your points. This would end tipping for me. Yeah, I really objected to this as well. Now, I, in general, object to the minimum wage law in the first place because it makes a lot of entry level jobs illegal. And, we should be encouraging more people to work, to start a career, build skills and experience so they can start earning more money and developing a long term career. But by raising minimum wages, you just increase the probability of hiring less people or replacing them with robots, or with automation. But the other part of this I didn't like was the two-tiered structure of it, is that fast food workers have their own special minimum wage where everyone else, if you worked in retail, if you worked in, in an office environment, if you worked in any other part of the economy and made minimum wage, you wouldn't make $20 an hour. You'd only make $15.50. Again, inequality before the law. I think that's bad. But it is interesting, the angle here about tipping. Now, I have so dramatically changed the way I tip. I remember I did a whole podcast about this about 2-3 years ago. I am very, very generous now as a tipper. I used to be a curmudgeon for a good part of my early adult years, because I was like, why do we have to tip? And how much should you tip? And which job should get tips? I don't like this. And the price should just be the price, what you pay. And then they should just pay the workers what they deserve. But my daughter at one point was a hostess at a restaurant, and she was able to keep the tips for people that took the to-go orders. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that. And number one, I never realized people tipped on to-go orders in the first place. But then my daughter was making more money because otherwise she was just making the minimum. And I thought, interesting. And that really kind of opened my eyes to the fact that maybe I need to be tipping to-go workers. And now I do. But the other part of this is that people were always saying, well, we need to have a living wage, and our minimum wage, whatever it is, whatever it was, is not a living wage. And so I that's why I decided, with inflation and with this clamoring for higher wages, I said, you know what, I'm just going to reward good service. So I don't just tip 15%. I will frequently tip 20%, 30%, and sometimes 50%. To the person that cuts my hair, 50%. And I will, Uber drivers, easily 25% I'll tip. Restaurants, almost never below 20%, unless the service is poor. And even if the service is poor, I will never tip below 15%. But for restaurants, often 20, 25, sometimes 30%. I've become much more generous with this. Now, I wonder if people are going to change their tipping behavior. What do you think? Okay, moving on down the list. This is from Glenn talking about the government grocery stores in Chicago. And Glenn said, but the plain facts are we've tried this solution before and end up to the present day. We've let the free market have it inside cities. And it was the free market that exasperated these problems. So I don't understand how first of all, they're talking about how the grocery stores in Chicago are moving out because of the crime and the homelessness and all the riffraff that it's happening around their store. And so now the mayor of Chicago wants to put in government-owned grocery stores. He says, and Glenn says, the free market that exasperated these problems. So I don't understand is how all you far-right puppets can get up here and talk about how apocalyptic things are when the government runs things for the better. Wow, free markets decide to extort an area for its resources. A government-run grocery stores, LOL, all what they do is reinvest in the area. They have an incentive to reinvest in the area. What do you have to say about that? Well, I have a lot to say about that. Okay, first of all, I am not a far right-wing person at all. I mean, I am pro-gay rights. I'm pro-abortion. I'm not just pro-choice. I'm pro-abortion. I'm for more immigration. I'm for making legal immigration easier. I am for our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And depending on the policy, sometimes I align with people on the left, sometimes I align with people on the right, and sometimes I align in the third place and disagree with both the left and the right because I actually believe in freedom and liberty. Um, in this particular case, the reason that these stores are moving out is because government is failing to do the number one job that local governments should be managing, and that's public safety. If there is crime rampant in the city of Chicago, and apparently there's crime rampant everywhere. There's a lot of theft going on in retail. Even in San Francisco has gotten so bad that Walgreens has been moving out a lot of their stores there. But the government, the local city government should be cracking down on crime. Now, I'm not necessarily one of these, thin blue line, hardcore, rule of law guys, because I think a lot of the laws we have on the books are BS. But fighting burglary and theft, yes, that's a reasonable and proper role of government. If the Chicago city government was properly managing crime, then they wouldn't have these private stores moving out. If the city of Chicago was addressing the housing crisis, which I'm not sure if they are or if they're not, but if they have a large homelessness population, that means they're probably not addressing homelessness. They're probably not allowing enough development to occur. And because that's what's happening in California. I mean, why are we see so much more homelessness? You might say it's drugs or it's mental health, and that does play a role. But the number one reason for homelessness is the fact that they can't afford housing. And the reason they can't afford housing is because there's so little available housing that there are bidding wars, and landlords and property sellers can get top dollar. And they can do that because there's very little new development going in. But here, should government step in and run grocery stores? I say no way. I mean, he's accusing, Glenn is saying that when the free market ran it, well, first of all, there is no free market, particularly in Chicago, that is so heavily regulated. For the longest time, the mob was the one that was, influencing and ruling parts of Chicago and playing a huge role in elections. It's not a free market. A free market would have no government interaction unless if rights were violated, like theft or burglary or murder or rape or assault or fraud. Those are rightful roles of government in a free market. Free market's not anarchy. But in this case with Chicago, the private grocery stores were already investing there. They already spent money to set up stores. They already invested money in bringing all this inventory into their stores by paying all of the workers in their stores, by paying sales tax and property tax and all the other excise taxes that were required of them by the rule of law. The private companies were already paying and investing in their community. But because the city government failed to manage crime, they said, screw this. I mean, we're not getting a return on our investment. And so they moved out, and you can't blame them. So if the city government comes in and sets up shop and has government run grocery stores, does that necessarily mean they're going to solve the crime, the theft? No. What they'll probably end up doing is having taxpayers subsidize all those losses. So I think this is the wrong way to go. I mean, local government should stick to the meat and potatoes. Police, fire, ambulance, that can be private or public, the ambulance part. And then public works, infrastructure, roads, sewer, water, that's the proper role of city government, not getting into the grocery business. Okay, here's another interesting comment. This is from the Cass Mighty. Boy, I did that video on the California bullet train, and poof, it blew up on YouTube. I had so many comments, so many views. And the Cass Mighty commented and said, if this is ever completed, which is kind of the running joke, if it's ever going to be finished, frankly, they haven't even laid any rail yet. By that time, autonomous vehicles will probably be perfected. Autonomous vehicles are promised not only to drive the car, but to do it at greater speed and safety. So you will be able to get in your car in Glendale and take a nap while your robot car blasts along at 90 miles an hour. You'll arrive at North Beach in San Francisco in about 4 hours. 4 hours later without the stress of driving. And wow, you'll still have your car and your stuff with you. Or you can drive your car to a bullet train station, go through security, wait for the train, then end up not in North Beach in San Francisco, but in Emeryville. That's what the Cass Mighty was saying. I was saying you're going to probably end up in Livermore or Gilroy. And then you're going to transfer to BART to get to the Embarcadero. And then you'll have to take a bus or an Uber to get to North Beach. And there's no way you can do this in 4 hours or less. This I 100% agree with. And that's why I wanted to present this comment from the Cass Mighty. This bullet train boondoggle is over budget. They haven't even, I mean, it's like 5 times over budget. They haven't had any portion of this line functional. I don't even know if they've laid rail. They're building all this infrastructure for this, and they're struggling. And when they finally get this first phase done, it's only going to be like from Fresno to Modesto or something like that. And to get from downtown San Francisco to downtown LA, I mean, there's just no way. And it's going to be way faster to use a plane, or in this case, like you said, self-driving EVs will be perfected by them. Here's another comment on the bullet train. This is from Crackracka241. And I had made a comment how I like policies where people that use it pay for it, pay for what you use. And if you don't use it, you shouldn't have to pay for it. Because that's one of my criticisms of mass transit is they want to tax car drivers. You've been trying to get this mileage tax through here in San Diego. Thankfully, that was blocked by Sandag. But they want to pass taxes on sales tax, on gas taxes, on mileage taxes, to tax people that don't even use mass transit to pay for it. What they should do is just charge people the appropriate price to use mass transit and let the people that use it pay for it. But Crackaracka said, didn't agree with me and said, quote, not paying for something you won't use. It sounds simple enough, but how does it work for you? Getting people to use bicycles and public transit will benefit any car driver since there are less people using the roads and have less traffic jams. People don't know what they need. They haven't got a clue. This is insane. This is basically saying the people don't know, so we're going to let government officials, they know the better. They know what's right for us. This is like Plato versus Aristotle. Plato not believing that the people could understand their reality, the people could make decisions for themselves. They had to have a philosopher king, some other person that was wiser to make decisions on behalf of the people because the people were unable to manage their own life. That's essentially what Crackaracka is saying here. And, you know, will people on mass transit and on biking help relieve some of the stress on the roads for car drivers? Yeah, of course that will. But not in any significant amounts, because the percentage of people that bike or use mass transit is tiny. And even if it built out this whole system, it would still be a very small fraction of the total amount of transportation use. And here's my quiz for you. If you're ever driving around San Diego and you see the trolley, you know, the red MTS trolley go by, or even if you see Amtrak or the coaster going up and down the coastline, look inside the car and roughly speaking, try to figure out what percentage occupancy it looks like it has. Every time I've seen the mass transit in San Diego, the same is true of buses. Rarely is it above 15 or 20% full. It's usually maybe less than 10% full. And the only exceptions to that rule is if people are going to some big event, whether it's used to be street scene in a gas lamp, but you know, if they're going down to Petco or if they're going to Viejas to see an Aztec basketball game, yeah, then the trolleys are a lot fuller. But most of the time, they're barely even used at all. So yeah, I mean, people have this romantic fascination with trains. It's just crazy to me. Going down the list here, here's a comment from about the bullet train. But this person invoked Thomas Sowell, who is one of my favorite economists. I love Thomas Sowell. He's kind of I guess part of the whole Milton Friedman, you know, Chicago School of Economics, and he's still an author. He's in his 80s, if not 90 years old now. He's just still keeps on going. But this comment was from TL and talking about the California bullet train and says they will never stop this. You know, they meaning the politicians in Sacramento. According to Thomas Sowell, quote, no one will really understand politics until they understand that politicians are not trying to solve our problems. They're trying to solve their own problems, of which getting elected and reelected are number one and number two. Whatever is number three is far behind, end quote. The politicians get huge campaign donations from the construction unions, whether it is for building a bullet train or housing for the homeless. And he says, you expect Gavin Newsom to kill the golden goose here? He is so right. And if you understand that the number one thing the politicians want is power, and they can only have power if they're elected and continuously reelected. So they don't not necessarily want what they think is best for society or what they think is best for voters. They will only pick the things that they know will help them get reelected. That's the main point. And so here, yeah, I mean, the bullet train had 53% voter approval, but it was only for a certain number of billions of dollars. And now they've spent more and more and more. They're way over budget, way behind schedule. He wouldn't want to kill the bullet train because there's so many people that love the idea of the bullet train, even though there's no clue on when this thing is even going to be functional, much less the vision completed. So of course, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like our local city councilwoman, Marnie Von Wilpert, talking about, well, we need housing for teachers and firefighters and the police. Well, she only invokes that to try to get those emotional heartstrings to have people understand that she's, quote, for the common good, and therefore try to get those voters to support her. It's not necessarily that she wants that particular project. Same is true here with the bullet train. Another comment here about the $20 minimum wage, and this goes to automation. And this is from Yes Indeed 3751. And Yes Indeed says, I live in Chicago and have been to, this is crazy. This is a San Diego podcast, and we already had a couple of comments from people in Chicago. I live in Chicago and have been to restaurants with no humans whatsoever. I'm a business owner. If I can get a robot to maximize profits, I would, no questions asked. It's just evolution. It's just business. Sorry, folks. That's why we became entrepreneurs in the first place. I love and respect all my staff. If a new product came along like a robot for my industry, we would keep our current staff and have them manage and never hire again. Robots are the future and will be despised, but is what it is. If you do a monotonous job that requires little skill, you will be replaced. Make yourself irreplaceable as an individual and learn a skill that won't be taken over by a computer in the short term. Hallelujah. 100% agree with this particular poster too. Yes, indeed. I agree with yes, indeed. Automation is inevitable. Automation is going to be pursued whether they raise the minimum wage or not. But raising the minimum wage just incentivizes them, accelerates the path for more automation. So, of course, they're going to have automation. I mean, even restaurants have dishwashing machines because they don't scrub everything by hand. We can go down the list. I mean, there's so much automation in farming. I mean, it used to be most people in America worked on farms. Now less than 1% work on farms, yet farms produce more food than they ever have because of automation. So, of course, businesses are going to pursue automation wherever they can. And you can't blame them for that because they're trying to provide a service to their customers and they're trying to do so at a profit. And yeah, in this age, the burden is on each individual to manage their own career. And if you're in a job that looks like it could be obsolete in 5 to 10 years, then you need to take responsibility and take control for your career and have skills that can't be replaced. That was like one of my objections with the UAW fighting against this law to require a human in self-driving semi-truck 18-wheelers, which was crazy. And apparently Gavin Newsom, I think, signed that into law. Did he? I'm trying to remember if he did or not. I think he did. And And that's ridiculous. That's, a Luddite move trying to preserve old jobs, fighting against technology and progress. And there's a lot of people that are fearful of automation. Automation is ultimately going to make our lives better. Automation is going to make our jobs easier. Automation is going to free up a lot of human uh, capital, a lot of financial capital, and a lot of brain power to go out and create new industries with new jobs that are going to require intelligent human beings to do problem solving. I mean, think about it. Are we better off with automation in automotive? Are we better off with automation in agriculture? Are we better off with dishwashers and washing machines? Of course we are. Our lives are better. And so the same is true here. And I got one final comment in the San Diego Community Forum. And this is about the whole, not really a merger, but a partnership between the San Diego Yellow Cab Taxi and Uber here in San Diego. And I had commented how I thought this is a win-win-win for certainly a win for the passengers, a win for Uber and a win potentially for the Yellow Cab guys as well, getting access to all the Uber requests. And Joel Ferrer commented and said, as an Uber driver, I definitely think the Yellow Cab partnership is going to ruin my earning potential. The app is already oversaturated with drivers, and this is going to make it even worse. This isn't a good thing for the drivers, only beneficial for passengers who nowadays never tip, LOL. Rider share has become a joke of a job. Okay, there's a lot in there as well. Okay, so he's already an Uber driver. And now, the San Diego Yellow Cab guys are going to be out there looking for drivers on the same Uber app. So it creates a more competitive environment for the Uber driver. That's true. But see, that's what a lot of people don't like. A lot of people want to prevent competition, or in this case, prevent cooperation amongst companies because they want to protect their job. Now, I get it. You want to protect your job, but you've got to be able to adjust to the changing conditions that are out there in the marketplace. And if more people are jumping in to that career and it doesn't work for you, then the right thing isn't to stop progress. The right thing is to find a different career that you can make more money. Now, I'm a huge supporter of Uber, of Airbnb, all of this kind of sharing community, whether it's ride sharing or home sharing, where people can monetize their assets. People can have supplemental income. In the case of Uber, people can have a side hustle. I love that idea, to supplement your income or to have temporary income when you're in between jobs, or if your life circumstances have changed because of family issues or whatever, you can always still do this and do Uber driving. And and as an Uber user, as a person that will use Uber from time to time, it's good for me too, because now when I summon an Uber, there's more likely they're going to get here sooner rather than later, because now either a Yellow Cab or an Uber car will come. Does that make it more difficult for Uber drivers? Potentially, yeah, it probably will. But on the other hand, it could work out better, because if there are more taxis that are available, it might encourage more people to use Uber and taxis, and therefore there will be more demand for that service because they're getting such great service. Imagine hailing a cab and having it pick you up in 5 minutes or less. People will say, this is great. I don't have to drive. I don't have to pay for $6 a gallon gas. I don't have to pay for crazy car insurance. I might not even need a car in the first place. And then maybe I can go rent one of those brand new, townhomes where they have minimal parking because I don't need a car. And suddenly everyone's lifestyle can change. So this actually could have some upside. But it is funny how he said that nowadays people never tip. That's a bummer. People should tip, especially for Uber. I mean, we've heard the stories how Uber drivers, if you break it down on a per hour basis, don't make that much money. And especially when they have to consider the wear and tear in their car. And that's true. That's a fair point. So again, I like I said, I'm a big supporter of the concept of pay for what you use. And if you're getting good service, pay for it, and that's why I'm in the school of I tip generously. And I feel good about that. And I feel like I'm rewarding the right people for the right kind of quality of service. And I'm also putting my money where my mouth is on supporting a lot of these uh, side hustle kinds of jobs. And like whenever I travel, I like to use Airbnb. Airbnb. Now, when I travel with my wife, she generally likes hotels because they're more predictable, and hotels often will have that breakfast in the morning, and and there's no crazy rules, and Airbnbs have gotten more expensive. But still, I will always use Airbnb if I'm traveling by myself because I support property owners and I love the whole idea of them monetizing their asset. Number two, I love how some Airbnbs are very creatively designed and decorated, especially if it's a granny flat or an ADU. I will rarely ever, I think I've only once used a Airbnb to rent a bedroom in someone's house. That's always very awkward to me. I like to have the whole place to myself, whether it's an apartment, a condo, a townhome, or even a house. And to see some of these folks really go out of their way to create a sort of cool vibe or energy in that particular Airbnb, give it a lot of personality. And I love that. And if it costs me a little bit more, I prefer that. It makes my stay so much more interesting rather than a generic hotel room. And and you get a lot of variety. I mean, I've stayed in Airbnbs on dude ranches in Holbrook, Arizona. I've stayed in, uh, gosh, I mean, places in suburban neighborhoods in Albuquerque. I stayed in a another one in Albuquerque that was like a old traditional um, adobe hut kind of a style of a of a housing unit. It was just like one giant room with a bathroom, but it was that classic old adobe look in Santa Fe, and it was decorated really cleverly. I've been at Airbnbs in downtown San Francisco, some that have these amazing game rooms. Some I was at one in Tucson that was fully decorated in University of Arizona Wildcat gear. I mean, including the shower curtain and neon light in the apartment. It was really cool. As a sports fan, I really appreciated that. So I'm big on Airbnb. I'm big on Uber. I love it. It's all good stuff. So tell me what you think. You can respond in the social media comments. This podcast will be repurposed in multiple ways. I have the live stream, which is this full hour and 25-minute or so segment. Then I'm going to break these up into pieces. You can comment on those on YouTube. And then I also do some short verticals on this that I like to post on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and on TikTok and Rumble and a lot of other sites. So you can respond there as well. So